My parents invited me to a family gathering just to inform me that they had left everything to my siblings in their will, so I stopped paying their bills. But 2 weeks later, my mother reminded me that her mortgage payment was about to be due. For the past 4 years, I have worked as a senior project manager at a construction company. Unlike many colleagues who often complain about demanding schedules and difficult clients, I thrive under pressure. There is something incredibly satisfying about overseeing a project from its conception to completion, from blueprints to the grand opening. The apartment I live in isn't huge, but it's mine, or at least it will be once I finish paying off the mortgage. The view from my balcony overlooks the river, and on clear days, I can see the mountains in the distance. That Friday night, I was enjoying a rare moment of peace with a glass of wine when my phone vibrated. My mother's name appeared on the screen. "Hi, Mom," I said, holding the phone between my shoulder and ear while pouring myself another glass. "Sweetheart." Her voice had that overly cheerful tone that usually meant she wanted something. "Your father and I are organizing a family gathering next Saturday. Everyone will be there, and we need you to come. I'm also making your favorite lasagna, the 3-cheese one with homemade sauce." Her lasagna was famous in the family, and she knew it was my weakness. I couldn't help but smile. "I'll be there." After hanging up, I went back to my balcony. It had been months since I last saw them. Between my 60-hour workweeks and their retirement schedule filled with golf and community theater, our lives rarely overlapped except on major holidays. Seeing my younger siblings would be interesting. With a 12-year age gap between us, while I was already working and paying for college, they were still in elementary school, getting all the attention and the latest gadgets. Our parents' approach to parenting had changed drastically. With me, it was all about responsibility, saving money, and learning independence. By 12, I was already doing my own laundry. By 14, I had become the designated babysitter whenever they wanted a night out. Meanwhile, the younger ones grew up with far fewer rules and much more indulgence. When I moved out at 18, they were still being tucked into bed at night. Now, at 24, both were living in apartments that our parents helped pay for while they were finding themselves. One had changed career paths 3 times before settling on communications, and the other was currently unemployed after quitting a barista job because their boss was totally toxic. The following Saturday, I arrived at my parents' house right at 4 p.m. My siblings' cars were already parked outside.
Great.
I was the last one to arrive, which probably meant they had already been talking about me. As I approached the front door, I heard laughter from inside. It abruptly stopped when I rang the doorbell. My mother opened the door. She was wearing an apron and had a tense smile. "Come in, come in." She gave me a quick hug, and I caught the scent of garlic mixed with her perfume. The two of them were sitting together on the living room couch, heads tilted toward each other in a conspiratorial way. When I walked in, they looked up at the same time with fake indifference. "Hey," one of them said, twisting a strand of hair around their finger. "Nice outfit." Coming from work. It was Saturday, but I didn't bother correcting them. "Hey." I nodded at the other, who greeted me with a slight nod in return. I walked into the dining room where my mother was setting the fancy dinnerware, the kind we only used on Thanksgiving and Christmas. "Wow, bringing out the best china," I commented. "This must be important." My parents exchanged a quick look that made me uneasy. Before I could ask what was going on, the others entered and took their usual seats across from me. During dinner, the conversation remained shallow. My mother talked about her gardening club, my father mentioned a new golf course he was considering, and the younger ones gossiped about people I didn't know from their social circles. No one asked about my job or personal life, which wasn't unusual, but it still stung. The lasagna was as delicious as always, but I couldn't fully enjoy it with the tension in the air. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she served dessert. Homemade tiramisu, another one of my favorites. "All right," I finally said, putting down my fork. "What's going on?" "Everyone is acting weird, and Mom made 2 of my favorite dishes." "Just tell me what this is about." My parents exchanged another awkward glance before my father cleared his throat. "We're getting older, and we've been thinking about the future," he began. My mother added, "We finalized our will and wanted to talk to you in person." "Okay," I said cautiously. "We've decided," my father continued, that the house and the lake cabin will go to your siblings. Silence filled the room. I looked at my father, waiting for more explanation. But he just stared back at me, as if expecting my reaction. Just to clarify, I finally asked, "That's it?" My mother took on a defensive tone. "You have to understand, sweetheart, you're financially stable, and they're still trying to find their footing. They need more security than you do." I looked at the two of them. Both were trying, unsuccessfully, to hide their smug smiles. "Just to be clear," one of them said, leaning forward, "we wanted you to know directly, so there's no confusion later. Everything is ours." I stood there in silence, looking at each of them. My father, expecting me to accept this without question. My mother, restless, trying to justify the unjustifiable. And the two on the other side of the table, satisfied, barely hiding their triumphant smiles. My head was pounding. "Let me get this straight," I said, crossing my arms. "The house and the lake cabin go to them. You decided that I don't need anything because, according to you, I'm financially stable." My mother opened her mouth to reply, but I raised my hand, cutting her off. "No, wait. I just want to understand the logic. They get everything because they're failures." Their smiles vanished instantly. "That's not fair," one of them muttered. "It's not our fault you're a workaholic obsessed with money." The audacity. Obsessed with money? I laughed, without humor. "Do you even know what it means to pay bills? To work for a salary that keeps a roof over your head? Because I left home at 18 with nothing, and I didn't have the luxury you two have. Since then, I've managed everything on my own. I never had anyone covering my expenses, never had anyone cleaning up my messes." "And what does that have to do with anything?" the other interrupted. "You always wanted this life." "Wanted," I repeated, feeling my blood boil. "Oh, so I wanted to start working early while you played around finding yourselves? I wanted to become an adult while you still had everything handed to you." "You have to understand, sweetheart." My mother tried to intervene. "They still need stability." I let out a bitter laugh. Stability? They've never done anything in their lives. Silence filled the room. "I left home with nothing while you gave them everything. I was a babysitter, a waitress, and in turn anything that helped me pay my bills. I worked while studying. I built everything I have through hard work. And now you're telling me they need stability more than I do? What have they done to deserve it?" They looked at me as if I were the villain. "You were always so independent. You never needed us," my mother murmured. My patience was gone. "And you encouraged that." While I was busy learning responsibility, they were learning what? How to ask for money. How to quit jobs because their boss was toxic. How to change careers 3 times. How to believe they're too special to work at a coffee shop. "I told you, that place was toxic," the younger one protested, offended. "Oh, of course. Because it's so much easier to blame others than to admit you just can't handle a job." They exchanged nervous glances, and my father cleared his throat. "This isn't up for discussion. The decision is final." I looked at him. "Do you even need a will? You're still alive. Which means you're still paying their expenses. For how long?" My mother avoided my gaze. My father remained firm. "They'll need support until they find their footing." "Find their footing in what?" "You're overreacting," the other one scoffed. My blood was boiling. "Overreacting? Let's recap. You spent my whole life teaching me I had to work hard for everything. You threw me out into the world while they got everything handed to them. And now that you're dividing assets, I get nothing because I worked too hard." No one answered. "You know what? Fine. You have every right to decide who gets what. But from now on, I'm making my own decisions too." "What does that mean?" my mother asked, suspicious. "It means that if you think I don't need anything, then neither do you." Confusion spread across their faces. "What are you talking about?" one of them asked, frowning. "The bills. The financial help. The money that comes out of my pocket to keep this house running." My mother's eyes widened. "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious. If I'm independent enough to not need an inheritance, then you're all independent enough to cover your own expenses." My father turned red. "This is blackmail." "No. This is reciprocity. My heart was pounding. I had never felt so furious, so betrayed, so clear-headed. I never asked you for anything. I never needed you. But the least I expected was respect. The two youngest started fidgeting. Wait, so that means? I smirked, without humor. It means that from now on, everyone pays their own bills. My mother was speechless. Sweetheart.
No.
I've spent my whole life being told to learn how to stand on my own. Now it's your turn.
They all sat there, stunned.
The dinner, which had started with smug grins and confidence, had ended in absolute panic. I stood up. It's been a pleasure attending this family meeting. Next time, don't bother inviting me. I grabbed my bag and walked out, feeling the weight of years of injustice finally lift off my shoulders. Now they can learn to pay their own bills. Weeks had passed since that night, and the silence between us had turned into something heavy, almost suffocating. Honestly, I didn't care. Since that disastrous dinner, I hadn't lifted a single finger to help them. No transfers, no bills paid, not even a single word exchanged. At first, they seemed determined to prove they didn't need me. My father kept his proud, stubborn stance. My mother pretended everything was fine. And my siblings? Well, they just kept living as if money magically appeared in their accounts. Until, of course, reality came crashing down on them. The mortgage was about to be due. This time, I wasn't there to cover the payment. Without the extra money I had been sending every month, the numbers simply didn't add up. My parents' savings were dwindling because they had been supporting two adults who refused to take responsibility for their lives. And my siblings, as expected, didn't have a single dollar saved.
Panic set in.
The first call came from my mother, her voice too casual to be sincere. She started with small talk, trying to ease into the real topic, and then, ever so lightly, dropped the question. The house, well, the mortgage is due in a few days, and we were wondering if you could help, just for this month. I listened in silence, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and deep annoyance.
No.
There was a pause, and then I heard her gasp, as if she hadn't expected me to be so blunt. Sweetheart.
No.
You made a decision, now deal with it. She tried to argue, but I didn't let her. After that, the messages started. At first, they were attempts to persuade me, then guilt-tripping, and finally, outright demands. My siblings, of course, jumped in, accusing me of being selfish and telling me to think about the family. But I remained calm. I knew the desperation would only grow.
And it did.
Days later, I was summoned to my parents' house. When I arrived, the tension in the air was suffocating. My father sat slumped in his armchair, his face grim. My mother stood in the kitchen, pretending to be busy just to avoid looking at me. My siblings were on the couch, irritated and uncomfortable. So, what's the emergency? I asked, crossing my arms. My mother was the first to speak, her tone overly sweet and cautious. Honey, the situation isn't easy. The mortgage is due tomorrow, and we just haven't been able to come up with the money. Oh, what a surprise. I cut her off sarcastically. Just a few weeks ago, I was a greedy workaholic. Now, I'm the solution to all your problems? She sighed. That's not what I meant. Then why am I here? My father finally spoke up. The bank will take the house if we don't pay. We're trying to find a solution, but we need time. If you could help this time, we promise we'll figure things out soon. I looked at them, feeling a bitter taste in my mouth. Even after everything, they still expected me to rescue them without question.
Fine.
I'll help. But on one condition. All four of them looked at me, alert. I want the properties transferred to my name in the will. I'm not asking for anything right now. I just want to make sure that when the time comes, I'll be the one ensuring everything is divided fairly. Chaos erupted immediately. What? My brother shouted. This is a scam. My sister screeched. No, this is justice. I corrected calmly. They all started talking at once, but I raised my hand, signaling for silence. Before we continue this pointless argument, let me ask you something. Can you pay the mortgage? Silence. Then you have two options, I continued. Either you accept my offer, ensuring that everything is fairly split in the future, or you lose the house now." My mother shook her head, still in shock. "Sweetheart, you don't need this. You're a grown woman, independent. Your siblings are still finding their way." I let out a dry laugh. "Finding their way? They're over 20, Mom. Since when does finding yourself mean doing absolutely nothing while you keep funding their lifestyle?" She hesitated, struggling to find an answer. "I know they've been irresponsible," she finally admitted. "But they're still our children. And what am I? A stranger? I was always the responsible one. I was always told I had to take care of myself. And now that I actually have, you still expect me to be the only one carrying this family?" My father let out a long sigh, defeated. "Would you really split everything fairly in the future?"
Yes.
"I'm not asking for everything. I just want to make sure they don't do exactly what they tried to do now. Take it all and leave me out." He closed his eyes for a moment. I knew he was battling his own pride.
Fine. We'll do it.
My siblings started yelling at the same time, but my father silenced them with a single look. "Enough. We have no choice." They were furious. I could see it in their faces. They knew that this meant that one day they would have to share the inheritance with me. But that wasn't my problem. The next few days were filled with tense silences. The will was amended, with a lawyer present to ensure everything was legally recorded. I transferred the money for the mortgage at the last minute, preventing them from losing the house. My siblings stopped talking to me after that. My mother tried to pretend things were normal, while my father remained distant, quieter than ever. And me? I simply moved on with my life. For the first time, knowing that I had secured what was fair. They didn't like my solution. But now there was nothing they could do about it. I paid off the mortgage. I made the transfer at the last moment, not for them, but because I wasn't willing to let such an asset be lost due to sheer irresponsibility. However, I never said I would support this house forever. While they believed everything would go back to normal, that I would continue being the fool who solved the family's financial problems, I already had other plans in mind. At first, no one noticed. Everything seemed the same. My parents sighing in relief, my siblings going back to their useless routines. But then, the notifications arrived. "What is this?" my mother asked, holding a letter in her hands. I calmly took the correspondence, opening it with a smile. "Oh, it's the rental contract for the lake house. I closed the deal yesterday. Starting next month, it will be occupied." The shock in the room was immediate. "You what?" my sister shouted, suddenly standing up. "I rented the house," I repeated calmly. "And starting next month, the main house will be rented as well." "You can't do this," my brother shouted, stepping toward me as if he was going to snatch the papers from my hands. I looked at him, unfazed. "Yes, I can. Everything is in my name." The silence was suffocating. "You promised you would share the inheritance in the future," my sister accused, her face red with fury. "And I will. But until then, these properties are mine, and I decide how to use them." "This isn't fair," my brother yelled. "These houses belong to the family." I laughed. "Oh, do they? Funny, because not too long ago, you were perfectly fine with the idea of leaving me with nothing. But now that I outsmarted you, you're bothered?" My mother watched everything in silence, pale. My father just lowered his head, as if trying to process everything. "I'm not taking the inheritance for myself," I continued. "But I have decided that you don't deserve anything. How can you do this to your own siblings?" my sister shouted, her hands trembling. I stepped closer to her, crossing my arms. "How could you try to leave me out? How could you call me greedy when all I ever did was work to build my own life?" They said nothing. "The houses will be rented out. The rental income will cover the mortgage, and the rest will be invested. When the time comes, I will decide how to divide everything. But don't count on me to maintain this luxury while you continue to be parasites." The uproar started immediately. "This is theft. You're a monster. Our own sister betrayed us." They screamed, furious, but I didn't care. For the first time, I was free. That was when I noticed my parents' expressions. There was no anger, no indignation. Just deep sorrow. My mother was clutching her hands tightly, her face devastated. My father stared at the floor as if he wanted to be anywhere else. Do you feel robbed? I asked directly. My mother looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears. You were our daughter,
And I still am.
except that, for the first time, I am a daughter and not the family source of income. You deceived us.
You taught me to survive.
I just learned to play the game better. My father took a deep breath, running a hand over his face. You could return the houses, and you could have treated me fairly from the start. But that's not what happened, is it? The silence confirmed my answer. My mother lowered her head, her shoulders trembling. My father closed his eyes, defeated. They wouldn't report me. I knew that. They would never have the courage to send their daughter to jail. I had won, and this time, no one was going to take that from me. For a while, the silence in the house was absolute. My parents said nothing, my siblings were furious, and I just watched. Did they really think I was going to back down? That after everything they had done, after casting me aside as if I were nothing, I would simply forget?
No.
The mortgage was paid off, the houses were rented out, and the income started flowing directly into my account. My siblings tried to protest, threatened, caused a scene, but nothing worked. The contract was signed. They tried to convince my parents to do something, but they just remained silent.
That was when I realized.
My parents weren't just sad. They were devastated. Not because of me, of course. They weren't sad about what they had done to me, about the way they had tried to erase me from the will.
No.
They were sad because, in the end, I was smarter than them. And that, to them, was unforgivable. You took everything, my mother murmured one day, after the first rent payment hit my account. I didn't take anything. I just made sure you didn't steal from me. She looked at me as if she didn't recognize me, as if I were the villain of the story. But I didn't care anymore. It didn't take long for my siblings to give up on the house. Without a free place to stay, without the luxury they had always enjoyed, they soon realized that real life was harsher than they had imagined. It wasn't long before they moved away, each going their separate ways, full of anger and resentment. And my parents? At first, they stayed clinging to their pride. But without my financial support, without my siblings leeching off their money, reality started to hit hard. They began selling the few possessions they had left to pay their bills. My father tried to go back to work, but no one wanted to hire a man his age for a well-paying job. My mother tried to reconnect with me a few times, but I didn't even bother to listen. Because, deep down, they deserved it. They weren't victims. They weren't poor souls caught by surprise.
No.
They knew exactly what they were doing when they decided to cut me out of the inheritance. They made that decision fully aware, thinking it was the right thing to do, believing I was strong enough not to need anything.
And that was fine.
If I was strong enough not to need anything, then they were strong enough to deal with the consequences of their own choices. Time passed, and their situation got worse. They lost everything. The house they once wanted to deny me was now mine, and they had nothing. I could have helped them. I could have shown mercy.
But why?
They had no mercy when they decided I didn't deserve anything. Now, I was the only one in the family with stability, money, a secure future. And them? Nothing. In the end, the world simply gave everyone exactly what they deserved. And me? I moved on with my life, knowing that, this time, no one would ever take advantage of me again. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel remorse. And, to be completely honest, I didn't feel anything for them. Because at the end of the day, I did nothing more than play by the rules they set. I wasn't the one who decided to cut their own daughter out of the inheritance. I wasn't the one who gave everything to two people who had never lifted a finger to deserve it. I simply did what they weren't smart enough to do. Make sure that the one person who had worked, sacrificed, and built something for themselves didn't end up with nothing. I had always heard that family is everything, that I should be loyal, that I should take care of my own. But what happens when family decides you don't matter? What happens when family chooses to erase you, to pretend you don't deserve anything just because you were strong enough to succeed without them? What happens is exactly what happened to them. They ended up with nothing because they never built anything for themselves. I didn't abandon them. They were the ones who taught me to never rely on anyone. All I did was prove that I had learned that lesson better than they ever expected. From the very first month the houses were rented out, my bank account grew like never before. Every month, the rent payments covered the mortgage, and the rest I invested smartly. Within a year, I had enough to expand. I bought other properties, diversified my income, and soon, money was no longer something I had to think about. Meanwhile, they were drowning. My siblings bounced from one job to another, never lasting long, always complaining that the world was unfair and that rich people are greedy. My mother tried to keep her dignity, but little by little, the unpaid bills forced her to face reality. And my father simply faded. I wasn't surprised the day they tried to reach out again. My mother called first, her voice shaky, trying to sound strong but unable to hide the desperation underneath. "Sweetheart, I know things didn't go as we wanted, but maybe we can talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I said bluntly. "But we're family." "Oh, we didn't seem like family when you decided I didn't deserve anything." She sighed. "We didn't do it with bad intentions. I don't care. I don't care why you did it or how you justify it. All I know is that I have no obligation to take care of you. Not when you taught me to only look out for myself." Silence. "We're not doing well. Not my problem." I hung up, and that wasn't the last time. For months, my parents tried to reach me in one way or another. First, with subtle messages, pretending they wanted to rebuild the relationship. Then, with disguised requests, acting as if they just wanted to check in on me. When that didn't work, they moved on to outright begging. I had always been the strong daughter, the one who didn't need anything. But now that their world was collapsing, suddenly, they wanted me to see them as victims. I wasn't a cruel person. I didn't enjoy seeing them struggle. But I also wasn't going to be their savior. I was fine. I was more than fine. My business grew. My life improved. I traveled. I saw the world. I did everything I wanted to do without having to worry about anyone else. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sacrificing myself for people who wouldn't do the same for me. I owed them nothing. I wasn't tied to anyone. I didn't have to carry the weight of people who had chosen to betray me. And that's when I realized the most important truth. Money is not the problem. The problem is the people who expect others to fix their lives for them. My parents made bad choices, and they paid the price. My siblings thought they could live off of others forever, and the world proved them wrong. I only did what I had to do. And because of that, I never had to worry about anyone else ever again.